Welcome to the Neurodiverse Universe, the podcast where we celebrate the incredible diversity of the mind. Join your host, Lee Green, as he takes you on a journey through the unique ways neurodiverse individuals experience the world, exploring the challenges, strengths, and perspectives that make each person's mind one of a kind. In each episode, Lee speaks with a diverse range of guests, experts, family members, loved ones, and people who are neurodiverse themselves. Together, they delve into the world of ADHD, autism, NVLD, and other challenges, uncovering how these differences shape our experiences, perspectives, and lives. So, whether you're neurodiverse, neurotypical, or simply curious, tune in as we explore the vast and vibrant universe of the mind, right here on the Neurodiverse Universe with your host, Lee Green.
Welcome to this episode of the Neurodiverse Universe. Today, I am truly honored to have one of the most influential voices in the neurodiverse community, Dr. Temple Grandin, as our guest. Temple Grandin is a renowned professor of animal science at Colorado State University and a celebrated advocate for individuals with autism. Her groundbreaking work has not only revolutionized the livestock industry, but also changed the way we understand and approach neurodiversity. Diagnosed with autism at a young age, Dr. Grandin has become an inspiration for countless people by showing that neurodiversity is a strength, not a limitation. She is the author of several best-selling books, including Thinking in Pictures and the Autistic Brain, and was the subject of the Emmy Award-winning HBO movie Temple Grandin. Today, we'll be diving into her personal journey, her advocacy work, and her thoughts on the importance of supporting neurodiverse individuals. Get ready for an enlightening conversation with someone who has truly changed the world.
Hi, I'm Lee Green. Let's dive right in. Can you tell me about your journey with autism, particularly how your early life experience helped shape your understanding of your own neurodiversity?
Well, I had very severe speech delay and symptoms of autism, and I was very lucky to get into a very good early education program. I cannot emphasize how important that is. And the main things that were emphasized in my program was speech, getting me to talk, turn taking at all kinds of games, learn how to wait and take turns in all kinds of games, and skills, things like putting my jacket on, brushing my teeth, using utensils, learning skills. And I'd recommend those are the things that a good program should accomplish. There was no forced eye contact in my program. And that's something that's being phased out, and it should be phased out because it causes sensory overload. And my program started early enough that nobody thought up the idea of forced eye contact. So I always say, parents will say to me, "What, am I in the right program?" And I said, well, how's your kid progressing? And your child should be progressing and like going to therapy. Therapy should be fun and be progressing. Speech, and here's one little hint, give the child time to respond. They're like a phone on a bad connection. Takes time to download the web page. And lots of emphasis on all kinds of little turn-taking games. Teach a kid to inhibit a response and skill. So that was really good. Also, my mother always encouraged my ability in art. I would just draw the same horse head over and over again. She'd expand that. You want to take fixations and expand them so they're less fixated. Draw other things associated with the horse, like maybe the entire horse, saddle, bridle, stable, things that are associated with the horse.
That's great. That's great. You've discussed how being a visual thinker has shaped your life and work. How can employers and educators better support different types of thinkers, including visual and hands-on learners in both educational and professional settings?
Well, the first step is for employers to realize that different kinds of thinking exist. I also tell employers we need the skills, and that's the whole point of this book right here, Visual Thinking, Hidden Gifts of People Who Think in Pictures, Patterns, and Abstractions. And there's research to show that there's different kinds of thinking, and that research is covered in this book. Also, a new article that was recently published in Nature showed that language is not required for either mathematical thinking or visual thinking. You know, you do not have to have language in order to think. I am an object. So the things I'm going to be good at are things like art, mechanical devices, building, animals, and photography. And the kinds of things later on was terrible. That was algebra, because there's nothing to visualize. But I spent my career designing cattle handling facilities, and that required visualization. And I worked with a lot of people who also designed equipment and built things that were object visualizers that couldn't do algebra. They did not have an advanced degree, but they could build all kinds of mechanical things, and they had patents for mechanical things. So that's my kind of mind, and I'm very concerned that my kind of mind is getting screened out by the education system because we can't do higher math. Well, I'm finding a lot of students today can't do elementary school math. For example, a 30-inch wide cattle chute is also one that's 2 foot 6 inches. I just had a college student that I had to explain that to. You know, practical math might be a little more important. Now, your second kind of specialized mind is your visual spatial pattern thinker. These are your mathematicians. You can get autistic kids that are visual thinkers like me, horrible at higher math, and then you can get pattern thinkers that are also autistic, really good at math. And I'm seeing some bad mistakes with them. These kids need to be challenged in math. If they become bored, they become big fat behavior problems. So you need to be moving them ahead in math. And then finally, there's the word thinker. And a lot of educators and a lot of teachers are word thinkers. And there's an autistic type of word thinker, very good at facts. And they can often be extremely good at specialized retail because they'll know every part in the auto parts warehouse. They will know every car on the dealer's lot and then help person pick out the right car, the most expensive car, the right car, or the right printer, or the right business insurance. These are actually examples of successful jobs. The right financial product. These are what I call specialized quiet retail jobs, where you usually work one customer at a time. You don't have a lot of multitasking chaos. Now let's look at things that are going to help most people on the spectrum at work. Pilots' checklists. If someone just yaks out a whole big long verbal stream of 6 steps to log into a cash register, for example, I can't remember them. First of all, we need to teach autistic employees to make their own checklist. Okay, here are the steps for logging into the cash register. Write it down. Also, avoiding chaotic, rapid multitasking jobs, chaotic stores during holidays, chaos at a takeout window, things like this. Probably better to avoid those kind of chaotic, rapid multitasking jobs.
That's great. One of my missions is to create employee opportunities for neurodiverse individuals. So based on your experience, what are some of the key strengths that neurodiverse employees can bring to a workplace?
Well, attention to detail is one of them. Real attention to detail. And the thing is, a lot of people are mixtures of the different kinds of thinking, but in autism, you may get an extreme object visualizer like me, or you get an extreme mathematician that ought to go into high-end physics. And you get less of the people that are mixtures. So-called normal people, you tend to have a lot more mixtures of the different kinds of thinking. And what I'm seeing right now is we have a real shortage of people that can just fix things. It's because schools have taken out hands-on classes. Gigantic mistake. Because people I worked with might have taken a single welding class or grew up working on cars, and then they ended up owning great big machine shops. The problem now is the little shops are not forming to turn into the big shops because the kids that are doing that are addicted to video games. I'll tell you one way to get them off the video games, and that is fixing mechanical things such as cars. And they find that that's really super interesting. Now, I just read a study recently that a little bit of video game playing actually be good for the brain, but it's 5 hours a week, not 10 hours.
Not 5 hours a day.
No, it's maybe 45 minutes every day. Yeah, it's a small amount.
Yes.
And the problem we've got in the job front is I'm very concerned that AI, artificial intelligence, is going to replace a lot of video game design jobs, a lot of animation jobs, especially lower level jobs, such as making hair on animals look realistic, making reflections look realistic. That'll be done by artificial intelligence. Low level coding jobs are going to get replaced. In fact, Silicon Valley's already hiring less coders. In the video game front, they just laid off 12,000 people. So for my kind of thinker, I'm going to push the high-end skilled trades. I'm not talking about roofing and stuff like that. I'm talking about people that invent equipment, electrical, plumbing, heating, and air conditioning. These jobs are not going to go away. And I worked with brilliant people that patented all kinds of equipment that were definitely undiagnosed autistic, dyslexic, or ADHD. In my generation, neurodiverse and special ed owned the shops. I want to emphasize the owning of the shops. And then your mathematical minds, I mean, yep, they're out there running Silicon Valley. You know, they go the higher education route. Now, what I want to emphasize to employers is how you need complementary skills. Let's go back to beef plants and food processing plants, stuff that I'm very familiar with, because I spent 25 years in heavy construction. The visual thinker who cannot do the algebra lays out the entire factory with the title of drafting technician, and the neurodiverse autistic mechanical person is inventing mechanical devices, purely mechanical devices, and the mathematician with the university degree is doing the refrigeration. That requires a lot more mathematics. You see, this is where you have to have both kinds of minds in order to have something like a food processing plant. And what I'm concerned is my kind of thinker, what I call the clever engineers, ones that don't have degrees. You need us. You know, let's look at that Boeing Starliner that got stuck up there on the space station. These are valves that are in the thrusters. I found the website of the company that made the valves. Now, I've put stuff like this together myself. And if you do it sloppily, the sealant's going to get inside the little tube. And what do you think it's going to do to the little tiny thruster? It's not going to work. The mathematician tells the thrusters when to thrust so that you re-enter without burning up. But my kind of mind needs to work on designing and making the thrusters. You see, you need to have both kinds of thinkers. Well, I just saw that rocket landing that SpaceX just did, where the rocket came in and landed right at the launch gantry. Yes. I watched a whole bunch of videos on that. It slows right down before it goes into what they call the chopsticks. A visual thinker had to think that idea up. Okay, we had a lot of mathematicians to get it to work. But that's just an amazing piece of engineering. If you know anything about engineering, somebody wrote that's engineering history books. Yes, it definitely is engineering history books.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. You've spoken about how individuals with autism often excel in areas like problem solving, detail orientation, and specialized knowledge. What advice do you have for employers looking to harness these skills?
Well, what I did to sell my cattle handling equipment designs is I simply showed off my work. I would show people my drawings. Here's one of my drawings from my books. In fact, this is the drawing that I used to sell Cargill on having me design the front end of every one of their beef plants. I learned to sell my work rather than myself. I would show off portfolios of work. That's how I got jobs. Also, I worked as a freelance business, which I avoided a lot of long-term social problems that you can get in a place where you might be there for a long time. But the thing is, we need these skills. And the person who might do the job interview the best is real personable and all of that, may not be the best person to, especially if you're developing new equipment. That's not going to be the person who's going to develop it.
Yes.
We need these kinds of thinkers.
Absolutely. Absolutely. People who think outside of the box.
Yeah. And one of the problems with verbal thinkers is to overgeneralize. They'll come up to me and they go, how do you teach kids with autism? My son is struggling in school. Well, I don't even know where to begin to answer that. It's so vague. First of all, I need to find out, is the kid 3 years old? Then I can talk about some standard early intervention strategies. Okay, is he fully verbal in 6th grade and get bullied? I've got to know what the struggle is before I can answer it. There tend to be certain things that tend to keep coming up. Bullying is really big. Not remembering long strings of verbal instruction is another one. But the verbal mind tends to and I don't know how to even answer the question if I don't have some idea of the kid's age. Because I'm not going to be telling a high school student about early intervention for 3-year-olds.
I'd like to go back to the workplace. What are strategies that neurodiverse individuals can use to navigate the challenges they may face in the workplace,
So
such as
one of the things I recommend is when they're given directions verbally, write down and make your own checklist. Because
Okay.
employers get really annoyed. So, well, I already showed him how to run the French fry machine 5 times. Is he stupid? This is where they need to say, look, I just need to write it down. And if the employer thinks that's stupid, you can say, pilots need a checklist. I need one too. And then remind them that the FFA requires a checklist to be used every flight, every single flight, not optional. The other thing that's a problem is vague feedback. You know, they'll let an employee go and go, well, he's just not a team player. That's too vague.
Right.
The boss needs to tell them exactly what they did wrong to make them not a team player. In my very first project, I criticized some welding and I said, look like pigeon doo-doo. And the plant engineer was a perfect job coach. He pulled me into his office and he said, why do the welders in the cafeteria right now? And you're going to go up and apologize for that. And then he explained to me that why he was his employee. And if I didn't like the welding, I should have come to him. He told me exactly what I should do, very calmly, in private, not screaming at me, just instructing me like a teacher what I should do. He was a perfect job coach. Thank you, Harley. You were the boss on my first job. And I didn't realize until years later what a good job coach Harley was. But this is the kind of feedback that I need to have.
That leads right into my next question, which is, from your own experience in both academia and industry, how can workplaces become more accommodating to the unique needs of neurodiverse employees while
Well, you see, that's getting too
allowing
big.
them to thrive?
Let's just look at the other thing that can be a problem in offices is LED lighting that flickers. You can take out your phone, photograph the room in slow motion video. You'll find the bad lights. And this is a problem for maybe 10 to 20% of neurodiverse, but also dyslexic, ADHD, and people with head injuries. And there's some people that just tend to get migraines, don't have any light bulb. They can have a problem with this. So if you're building new offices, please don't put horrible lights in them that flicker. Now, what could you do to accommodate that? Let's think simple. If there's windows, let's get that person's cubicle over by the window. That will help. If there are no windows, then I would recommend to the employee to go to the lamp store, find an LED that they like that does not flicker, and put that lamp on their desk and wear a hat. Okay, these are simple things that they can do. I've been doing these talks long enough that the same things keep coming up. The pilot's checklist, clear feedback, vagueness doesn't work. Now, what I learned on team projects is I'd rather have a well-defined piece of the project that's my piece of the project. Okay, I've done that in design work. Okay, we're doing something in the meatpacking plant. It's from this part of the line to that part of the line. That's my stuff. Or if it's writing animal welfare guidelines, I said, well, I'll do this part of the document and I'll get it done the 15th of next month and put it in the format of the old document. So I have a clear piece of it that I do. Now, that doesn't mean I totally ignore the rest of the document. But if I find a mistake in the document, I've learned don't rub their nose in it. Sometimes it's better just to go ahead and quietly just correct it, especially when it's a mistake where it's obviously wrong. So that's how I handle teams. I like to have, I'll sit in a meeting and there might be 20 people in a conference room. And I said, I like homework. I like to have some homework I can do very specific. And I'll say, now I'll do this part of the document and put the references in this format and get it done on the 15th of next month. And if they agree to that, then I do it.
Great.
But that's something I've learned to do, is to have a well-defined piece of it that's mine. And then I've learned to keep my nose out of some of the other stuff and just make sure I do a really good job on my thing. The other thing I'd recommend, if anybody is neurodiverse, keep all your performance reviews in paper at home. Keep all that documentation in paper at home. Things disappear from online. So, because you always got to protect your portfolio, because that's what you're going to use to get your next job.
I'd like to jump a little bit to mental health and self-care. So many neurodiverse individuals face challenges with anxiety, sensory overload, other mental health issues. How have you managed these aspects of your life, and what strategies have helped you succeed while maintaining your well-being?
Well, I was one of the people where anxiety and panic attacks worsened with age. As I went through my 20s, colitis attacks became worse and worse and worse. I don't know what going to happen to my health that was so bad. And in my early 30s, I started taking antidepressant medication in a very low dose. And I want to emphasize that when you take that for anxiety, it needs to be a very low dose. The doses for depression are often too high. I discussed that in my previous book, Thinking in Pictures. I have a whole chapter in there called A Believer in Biochemistry. And I don't even know if I'd be alive today if I hadn't taken that medication. My health was turning into such a mess. And today I'm 77 years old. I still take the same medication. I've seen horrible messes when people have gone off of meds where they were stable, really, really bad outcomes. And then sometimes you go back on the meds and they don't work. I have, within the last year, I talked to a lady that ran art galleries, and she went off of Prozac. And she got it to work again, but it took a long time to get it to work again. Then she realized that that was probably a mistake. Boy, and if you're bipolar, you're stable, don't go off your meds. You need to find meds that you can tolerate well and don't cause obesity and things like that. But some people are totally against meds. There's no way I can be against meds when I've been on a med since my early 30s. And very quickly, a few days after taking that med, panic stopped. It was like my nervous system was in a constant state of fear for no reason. The fear circuits in my brain were ramped up and overactive. And what the drug did, and I know this is an old-fashioned analogy, it was like adjusting the idle screw on an old-fashioned carburetor. So when the motor's in neutral, it's not racing, but also it's running fast enough that it doesn't stop. I know a lot of people now don't know what a carburetor is, but it's still a really perfect analogy. You don't want the motor racing, but on the other hand, the motor has to keep going enough so it doesn't just stop running.
So you were calming the amygdala, but keeping
it calmed down the amygdala, and I've been on it since my early 30s, and when I travel, I make sure it's in both bags.
And I think it's important because a lot of my clients I see are feeling good and things are going great, but maybe I don't
Well,
need
I made that mistake when I first went on it. First 6 months, I made that mistake. No, you're stable. It's almost like taking insulin. But I want to emphasize about the low dose, because I probably had 100 people tell me that they took a little bit of Prozac or a little bit of Zoloft, one of those kinds of drugs, and low dose worked great, doubled the dose, insomnia, could not sleep, agitation, felt like they drank 50 cups of coffee. And they said, well, I hate that drug, I'll never try it again. But what happened is a dose window. And for anxiety, that dose window is usually start at dose or less, usually.
Yeah, and they need to start at a low dose, right?
You start at a low dose and work at a low dose, stay at a low dose.
Yeah.
Because the label doses are for depression. They're too high for anxiety. And for some reason, the verbal thinkers have a hard time getting that. You know, I've been explaining this for years. And I've had so many people tell me, oh, a low dose worked. We doubled the dose and it was absolutely horrible. We'll never touch that drug again. I've heard this 100 times. Same thing. There's a point where anecdotal starts to become evidence.
Yes. I would just want to change gears just
okay, fine.
And kind of wrap up with the future of neurodiversity in society. So in the decades since you first started advocating for individuals with autism, how have you seen society's understanding and acceptance of neurodiversity change? Well,
I worked with a lot of people that were undiagnosed autistics owning businesses like machine shops. I'll tell you right now that those people are not being replaced. We're not going to have anybody to fix things. Factories are having a horrible time right now finding people to fix stuff. Okay, we're going to do all these robots and stuff. Somebody still has to fix them when they break. And that's really likely to be somebody who's neurodiverse. And I'm really very concerned about losing skills. And that's one of the things I wrote about in my visual thinking book, especially the object visualizer like me that's terrible at higher math. The other thing that's a problem for a lot of people on the spectrum now is that social skills are not taught in the same way they were taught in the 50s. In the 50s, kids were taught to shake hands, taught to say please and thank you. And when kids were 7 and 8 years old in my neighborhood, when the parents had a party, you had to put on your good clothes and greet the guests, go out and sell candy for charity. No, mom and dad didn't sell it for me. You had to go up and ask, go up to people and talk to them about it. Those things taught social skills. Also, adults corrected young children. No matter where you went, adults corrected young children. This helped to teach some basic social skills. I'm finding today that a lot of students don't want to call on a phone. I think COVID has kind of knocked some of the wind out of a lot of students. They have less ability to think on their own. When I was a kid, I tinkered around with all kinds of stuff. I grew up using tools. Kids don't tinker today.
Right.
And some of them have never used a tool. I think that's a problem. And then we're not doing that well by our math kids either, challenging them with enough, like harder math so they don't get bored.
Do you think society has been more accepting of the neurodiverse community over the
I
years?
think, in my generation, the people that I worked with, and I have to be vague about the equipment they designed because they're not disclosed. So I've looked up all their patents, and I tell you, the industry is still using this stuff. These weren't stupid patents. These were really good basic patents for mechanical devices that are still being used in beef plants today.
So I guess your hope for the future is that there are more of these jobs for people who are neurodiverse
Well, the thing I tell business people is plain and simple, we need the skills. As I travel around, I'm finding more and more broken elevators, broken escalators, because we're not getting enough young people in to fix those. Now, that's for my kind of mind. I want to emphasize the mechanical stuff and working with animals. That's more for my kind of mind. I'm not going to push art as much because of the AI issue, but there still is going to be a place for handcrafted, specialized things that are artistic. That's not going to go away. People are still going to want some handcrafted, beautiful. That will not be replaced by computers. But what I'm worried about is the more just make an illustration,
graphic arts
or something like that. It's going to get done by AI.
Right. So AI may be able to replace the graphic artist per se. Right.
I think some of those jobs are going to go out.
Yeah,
That's
they
one
are.
of the reasons why I'm pushing the hands-on and the low-level programming jobs. Some of those are going out. But AI can make up a lot of nonsense too. I just was talking to my grad student because we're grading my papers right now for my class. And a lot of the students had difficulty with an assignment where I had the students look up journal articles on different scientific databases and learn how to do that. And there seemed to be more problems with just thinking for yourself. And she went on one of those AI things and she asked about goat behavior and environmental enrichment, and it gave her a bunch of rubbish that was not even real. Sometimes it just hallucinates.
Right. If it's off, it's off.
But I tell people that we need the skills of the neurodiverse. They have skills that we need. Okay, a visual thinker like me is going to really care about keeping the water system in your town running. Yeah, you'll care about it when it breaks. The visual thinker thinks about preventing it from breaking.
Greatly needed.
No, it's stuff that's needed. And the other thing I'd recommend is a gradual transition from school to work. I'm seeing too many cases where you've got a brilliant student graduates from college magna cum laude, and they can't handle the workplace. Work skills are not the same skills as academic skills. And grandparents come up to me all the time, and they tell me that they figured out they had autism when the kids got diagnosed. But that grandparent had a paper route at age 11. We've got to find substitutes for paper routes. Volunteer jobs, church, senior center, something where somebody outside the family is the boss.
Animal shelters.
Illegal, they need to get real jobs. And we need to avoid the multitasking chaos, takeout window sort of stuff.
Right. I was just saying animal shelters is a great place.
Yep, animal shelters. There's been a lot of volunteer work at animal shelters.
Yeah.
That's been, and then one 12-year-old girl just within the last year was very proud that she was the church's coffee lady. That's the sort of thing that can be set up even in real low-income areas. I haven't recommended anything here that couldn't be done in the low-income area. There's a lot more opportunities around than you think. People just don't see them.
What are your hopes for the future of neurodiversity in terms of employment, education, societal inclusion? What are your hopes? What do you want the future to look like?
Well, I want people to
that are
realize
neurodiverse.
they need to be hiring them because they need the skills. It's that simple. The mathematical minds, they run a lot of stuff out in Silicon Valley. I mean, who wrote the programs for artificial intelligence? That would be the mathematical minds did that. And then you need people The verbal thinkers are very good at things like record keeping. Okay, you just got to really keep accurate records. And then right now, as more and more things go online, it's actually turning into a bigger and bigger mess, is what's happening with a lot of stuff. You know, and I don't think I've seen systems in the airlines that I don't think have fully recovered from the Microsoft crash we had. And you know, the system used to update when a plane was 20 minutes out and going to be late. No, now the system's trying to tell you to board the plane when the plane is not at the gate. It did not do that before. That's the kind of stuff I noticed. Yeah, and they're working around it. They try to speed up the boarding.
Wow, very interesting. Well,
no, but we need these skills. This is the thing, and
they're greatly needed.
They've got skills that we need, and they need to be, you know, job coaching is really important. And when they say, let's say on the team player stuff, you say we're not a team player, you call, and then tell them specifically, you called Jim a jerk at the project meeting, and make it very plain that that's not acceptable way to handle it. You know, one of the problems that some autistic people have is they'll tell them, say, well, isn't that stupid? You know, you have to learn to be a little more diplomatic about it.
Right. A little more job coaching for that person.
A little more job coaching. There's a great program in Denver called TACT, where it's called Teaching Autistic Citizens Trades, and they teach car mechanics, welding, carpentry work, machine shop stuff, and they have a teacher in there to teach a small class, but then there's a job coach there. They're going to have to show up on time. Hygiene can sometimes be an issue. That is something where they just have to clean it up. And even on the construction site, that matters. Clean it up. And I know there's sensory issues, but there's a whole lot of different choices of things. I'll tell you a few little hints on scratchy clothes. Wash them 3 times first. That sometimes really helps. Real simple thing to do. Wearing your underwear under stuff that's scratchy, that's another thing you can do. But you do just have to clean it up. And that was in the HBO movie. They made it very clear that I had to clean it up. The other thing is people don't see doors to opportunity. There's a scene in the HBO movie where I get the editor's card. That scene is real. Because I knew if I worked for that magazine, that would really help my career. There's all kinds of back doors, and people are not seeing those back doors. They get so hung up on the label. They just can't see, well, there's an opportunity there.
Yeah, there's some great opportunities for the neurodiverse community. We just have to look for them.
You know, and they've got skills that we really need. I spent 25 years out in construction, and right now, the few shops that are left, they're price gouging right now. Big time. 4 times price gouging right now. That's going on now.
Wow. They really need these skilled people.
Yeah, really that's do. Right.
Well, I just want to thank you so much for your time. I really thank you. I know how busy you are, and we really appreciate your time and speaking with me today.
Okay, well, good. I hope I've given people some ideas they can take home and use. One of the things I really talk about in my visual thinking book is how we need the skills of people that are neurodiverse. Got this right here.
Right.
Okay, great to talk to you.
Great to talk to you as well. Do you have any future projects coming out that you'd like to let people know
Well,
about?
mainly what I'm doing right now is I'm doing a lot of talks on the different kinds of thinking and how we need the thinking.
That's great. Perfect.
That's what I'm spending most of my time doing right now.
That's great. Well, thank you again. I really appreciate your time.
All right, great to talk to you.
Okay.
I'll sign off now. Thank you for having me.
Okay.
Okay, yeah, bye.
Thank you for joining us today on the Neurodiverse Universe. I hope you found our conversation insightful and empowering. Remember, whether you're navigating the world as a neurodiverse individual or supporting someone who is, you are not alone. For more resources, support, and to stay updated on upcoming episodes, head over to our website at www.thenneurodiverseuniverse.org. Also, please feel free to reach out to Lee at positivelife.coach, and as always, be your best self. See you next time.